Hey guys, Matt here. This is going to be a video on prepping for the possibility of an assault weapons ban. Now, because of the political climate in this country, because of the presidential debates, because we've seen things in the last 6 to 12 months coming from everywhere from the anti-gun crowd to certain politicians to the UN, there's been a lot of speculation that we may be looking at the possibility of another assault weapons ban. Now, I'm not going to speculate as to whether or not we will or won't have another assault weapons ban. I think in addition to there being what appears to be a new revival from the anti-gun crowd to push for another assault weapons ban, there's also been a very big revival of the gun culture in this country. And I think those two opposing forces are going to be headbutting for quite a while. So I don't know what the likelihood is of being able to pass any sort of gun ban legislation. But in the interest of always being prepared, I think it is very important to prepare as if that is definitely a possibility. So I've been getting a lot of questions on what kinds of things someone should prepare with, what kinds of things should be stocked up on, and kind of what order you should try and stock up on these items. So that's what I want to make this video about. I know a lot of us out there, if you're in the gun community, if you've been around guns for a while, if you've paid attention to the political climate, a lot of this stuff is going to seem like common sense, but there's still a lot of people out there, newer gun owners, who really are looking for this information on what kinds of things they should stock up on. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these things that I think should be pretty important and definitely, regardless of whether or not there's an assault weapons ban, should be the types of things that you stock up on. Alright, so here we have the first item that I think everybody should be stocking up on. Regardless of whether you think there's an assault weapons ban coming or not, prices go up, they never go back down. That is going to be standard capacity magazines. Now, why do I use the term standard capacity magazines? Well, because that's what these are. Okay, this term high capacity magazine was something created by the anti-gun crowd to kind of scare us into thinking that these magazines hold more rounds than they should. They don't. The rifles that these magazines were designed to go to, AR-15, AK-47, were designed to have 30-round capacity magazines. That is standard capacity for these magazines. Just like a Glock 17, a standard capacity magazine is going to be 17 rounds. That's what the gun was designed to have. Okay? What we need to start doing is calling 10-round magazines low capacity magazines, because that's exactly what they are. So why is stocking up on magazines a good idea? Well, if you know anything about history and you remember the 1994 assault weapons ban, you know one of the biggest parts of that legislation that affected gun owners the most, okay, and one part that was very important to everybody in the anti-gun crowd was the restriction of magazine capacity down to 10 rounds. Because of that, these magazines, 30 rounders, 20 rounders, 17 rounders, whatever they were, okay, became very, very valuable and very hard to get because you were only able to own or purchase magazines that were created and distributed before the ban went into effect in 1994. So stock up on these now. They will definitely be worth their weight in gold later on. Alright, now the next thing we have on our list is going to be ammunition. Here we've got a box of ammo. Actually, this is a box of fully loaded mags. Now, why is ammunition important? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, during any sort of assault weapons ban, one thing you run the risk of having is seeing prices go up and availability going down on certain calibers, especially calibers associated with certain types of firearms that might be on a ban list. And because of that, you want to stock up on what you can now when you can. Another reason why stocking up on ammunition, I believe, is personally important is because, again, in the last 6 to 12 months, we've seen a big push from the UN and from other anti-gun organizations to try and put restrictions or outright ban on ammunition. And because of that, if we do see any sort of revival or reinstitution of any sort of assault weapons ban, I think there's about a 50-50 chance that you will also see some sort of piece of that legislation devoted towards some sort of ammunition restriction. And for that reason alone, I think it's worth trying to stock up on as much as you can. Alright guys, so the next thing on our list is going to be key components to key firearms. Specifically, any firearm that you feel or that common sense would tell you is probably going to end up on an assault weapons ban list is probably something you want to stock up on. Now what we have here is the lower receiver for an AR-15. Now, why is this a key component? Well, because it's the most regulated part of the firearm because it has the serial number. Okay? Because of that, it's going to be the most likely candidate for something to be affected by any sort of gun ban. It also happens to be fairly cheap to pick up now. You can pick up strip lower receivers for between $50 to $100. Pick up 1, pick up 2, pick up 5, pick up 10. Just like magazines, these will not go down in value. And in the event of an assault weapons ban, they will be worth their weight in gold. Alright guys, so here we go. Last but certainly not least, on the list of things you should be stocking up on, complete firearms. Specifically firearms that you know have a likelihood of being affected by any sort of assault weapons ban. So we're talking AR-15s, we're talking AK-47s, AK-74s, any sort of .308 battle rifle, pretty much any rifle with a detachable box magazine, a pistol grip, and or an adjustable stock is probably something that would be affected by any sort of assault weapons ban. Now granted, unless you're talking about thousands upon thousands of rounds of ammunition, this is probably the most pricey thing on the list of things to stock up on, and probably the thing that's the hardest for anyone to stock up on due to time and money. But if you have the time, if you have the money, you have the availability to pick one of these up, or 2 or 5 or however many, highly something that I recommend. Okay, so what have we learned? Well, basically we've learned that ammo, magazines, key components to firearms, and whole firearms are the things you should be stocking up on. Now this stuff is really easy to start stocking up on for the most part. Buy a couple boxes of ammo, buy a couple extra magazines every paycheck. If you can afford it, maybe next time you're online and you can spend an extra $100 out of your paycheck, when rent's not due, you pick up an extra strip lower receiver. Highly something I recommend. Whether we're talking about an assault weapons ban or just in general for prepping purposes, stock up on these items because they will always be worth money and they will always be valuable. So anyway, that's it guys. I appreciate you watching. Questions, comments, video responses, send them my way.